In Christian theology, the tree of knowledge bore the fruit eaten by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Eating the fruit was the original sin. In EMS, the tree of knowledge is different, but still involves original sin, only not theologically. I'm Angry Bill, and this is Pre-Hospital Wisdom. We understand that medicine is medicine, but pre-hospital providers have special skills, knowledge, and culture that other medical providers don't have. Let's raise the bar here a little bit. Think of an EMS call as a tree. At the beginning, when I'm assigned to the call, I'm not even sure if there's a tree there or not, let alone if it's an oak or a pine tree. Is it an old tree or a sapling? Has it been hit by lightning in its life? Is the bark smooth or craggy? Are there leaves on the tree, or is it winter? Patient contact usually begins with some variation of the question, what's the matter? Think of this piece of information as the EMS tree's trunk. The actual wording of the question's not important. You can ask, what can I do for you? What seems to be the problem? Are you hurt? All of these beginning questions start the call and give us an idea of what we're doing on that scene. If there's no problem, then there's no tree. Every call begins with dispatch information. What the caller thinks is going on, third-party caller statements, a guess as to the nature of the problem, and that kind of information. Dispatch information comprises the roots of our tree model. We may not be able to see the roots, but there's information there if we're inclined to dig it up. How much digging will be required depends on how well that knowledge is passed on to responders. Separating off from the trunk are the main branches of our tree. In general, you can use the OP-QRST-A mnemonic, onset, provoking quality, radiation, severity, timing, and associated symptoms. The mnemonic you use, or even whether or not you use one, is not important, but most calls require some information about each of those key points. Each of the OP-QRST-A branches has sub-branches of questions. So for onset, the main branch question is, really, I'm sorry to hear that. How long has that been going on for? Forking off of that question are the sub-branches. What were you doing then? Oh yeah? How long had you been doing that? Has this ever happened to you before when you were doing that thing? How was that time similar? The main onset branch thus separates out into smaller and smaller branches, all the way out to little twig questions. That pattern of questioning is repeated for each of the main OP-QRST-A branches. In most cases where time isn't a factor, it's not important whether you skip from branch to branch or pick one branch and follow it out to its end before switching to another branch. Start with onset or start with associated symptoms. What else is wrong with how you feel? Ask all of the main branch questions before asking detailed twig questions, or skip from branch to branch as the conversation leads you. It doesn't matter. What matters is that no matter the order, each branch is thoroughly examined out to its end. Physical exams are important too. I think of this as fleshing out my tree, the equivalent of looking at the bark, the leaves, and the animals that live in the tree. The more information I have, the more accurate the picture of my tree. Discover the texture of the bark. Is there a bird's nest in this tree? Are the leaves green and healthy, changing colors, or fallen off? How thick are the branches? There's a difference between a centuries-old, craggy-assed oak tree and a sapling that was just planted. Sure, they're just both oak trees, but it is the specifics that make each tree unique. Think of the physical exam as showing you those differences. And for those of you that aren't understanding the model necessarily yet, they're both two types of chest pain calls. But two chest pain calls can be just as different as a centuries-old, massive, craggy oak tree and a just planted sapling. They're both oak trees, they're both chest pain calls, but they're both really different. Original sin comes into our model of the tree of knowledge because in many cases, most bad decisions on an EMS call come from not having an accurate picture of your tree. You think you have a pine tree, so you talk the patient into staying home. But it isn't a pine tree, it's a cedar tree you're dealing with. Cedar trees should go to the hospital. Whoops. That's kind of written in jest, but it's a serious point that decisions made without accurate information are only good decisions on accident. Most incorrect decisions come from inaccurate or incomplete information. We all know how to treat an MI, for example, but missing the fact that we're dealing with an MI makes it almost impossible to make purposefully correct MI treatment decisions. Tracing back poor decisions usually leads to an incomplete exam or an inaccurate history. So mistreating the patient is a sin, But doing it because of an incomplete history in physical is the original sin. Let me know what you think, especially if you disagree. One of the most helpful things you can do is share this content with someone you know. Click here somewhere for another video, or click over on this side for the channel page and all the videos. Subscribe is around here somewhere. I'm Angry Bill. This is Pre-Hospital Wisdom. And until next time, stay safe.